the members of the Civil Society Reference Group to understand the PBO Act, what it is, what it entails, what benefits accrues to the members of the PBO Act, and not just that, to bring the bigger question about the willingness and the goodwill and understanding of the civil society so that they're able to engage government on the matters of implementation of the PBO Act from an informed point. I must say 2-3 things. Number one, the PBO sector, or what you call the civil society sector, is one of the biggest employers in this country. It is one sector, when we look across, we have an estimated employment of a minimum of about 70,000 Kenyans who are directly employed. We are not talking about indirect. This is also a sector that controls a huge amount of resources in the upwards of, in a year, in the upwards of more than 80 billion and above. That is that this is a sector that provides a huge wide range of services. In fact, contrary to many people who think that the civil society in Kenya is about the human rights, the democracy, the governance, on the contrary, the single largest sector of the civil society is actually the civil society that's involved directly on the development and services provision. So it's a sector that we have to first understand what it is and what it is not. On the PBO Act, and what I was invited by CSRG to come and talk about, I would urge the following. Number one, the first and the most important starting point for the government to demonstrate goodwill is to convene a no-stakeholder meeting. And this has to be convened by the cabinet secretary himself. It begins there. When the president stood on a podium at the United Nations Civil Society Convention, he did explain himself very, very clearly. He wants to have a constructive, honest engagement with civil society. And that is something we really welcomed. The CS, when he was commencing the PBO Act, was equally equivocal on that point. We now believe it is time to walk the talk. Can he convene a no-stakeholders meeting to chart the way forward in terms of implementation and operationalization of the PBO? The second thing is this, that the tools of yesterday cannot address the challenges of today. The institutions that existed and managed the PBO before the promulgation of the PBO Act cannot be the same institutions that are going to operationalize and manage the transitions, right, and the management of implementation of the PBO Act. There has to be a radical shift and change in those institutions. What I mean is this. There has to occur a serious change in the coordination board, which is now the regulatory authority. There has to occur a major change in the NGO Council, which is now the federation, right? And these changes must be done in such a participatory, consultative, and inclusive manner, because that is what the CS talked about, and we hope that when we convene this meeting, those consultations will happen. The third thing that we feel is that there are going to be a serious issue about drafting the regulations. Under Article 69 of the PBO Act, there is required to be drafted regulations. Those regulations are going to be like the real implementing tool of the Act. And therefore, those regulations must be drafted in collaboration, in participation, and in consultation with the civil society. The point we are making here is this. When media was fighting for the space on the self-regulation, civil society came in and supported media because we believed in Article 34 of the Constitution of Kenya, where media must be self-regulating, it must be independent, it must be allowed to operate. Civil society must equally be allowed that self-regulation. The PBO talks about it, but talking is one thing, actualizing is where the challenge is. And as the PS talked yesterday, the CS also talked about it, Article 36 is critical of the civil society. It talks about the right of assembly, the right of participation, the right of association, and all those. So that principle of self-regulation is very, very important to the civil society. And we stand by that. And therefore, we want to see a transitional process spearheaded by the cabinet secretary, jointly in collaboration and consultation with the civil society. And I want to urge my colleagues from the PBO sector, it is time to get up and engage.
Yes.
We believe that the government has the will, it has opened the door, and we must seize that opportunity and engage it. I like the way the media took the issue about self-regulation.